Welcome everyone to our Packers News pregame live chat alongside Pete Dougherty. I am Olivia Reiner. The Packers are just 90 minutes away from their last game of the regular season against the Chicago Bears. We'll get you up to speed on everything, take a look at some of the injury report, plus we'll also preview some matchups that you should keep an eye on in today's game. Before we get into that, as always, you can be a part of our conversation. If you're over on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube, leave us a question or a comment down in the chat. Pete and I want to hear from you. We'll get to some of your thoughts toward the end of our conversation today. The Packers' offensive line is going to be down one of its anchors. Left tackle David Bakhtiari sustained a season-ending knee injury earlier this week. He won't be available in today's game, nor will he be available for the rest of the seasons. The Packers have some options at either tackle position, including Billy Turner, Rick Wagner, and Elton Jenkins. Who is most likely to start at both right and left tackle today?
I guess the best guess is that they'll do what they did for the games that Bakhtiari missed earlier in the year, and so that would mean Billy Turner at left tackle and Wagner at right tackle. That would be the best guess. I guess there's always the chance, they could, knowing that it's for the rest of the season, bump Jenkins out there if they think he'd be their best guy out there. You can't rule out that possibility. LaFleur tried to kind of suggest this week that it could be a game-to-game thing depending on matchups. And, he's probably just saying that to keep future opponents on their toes, but you never know what they might do. But, the smart money says Turner at left tackle and Wagner at right. That would be the best guess.
With Wagner likely at right tackle, that means Lucas Patrick would also likely be at right guard. The Packers' weakness would then be on the right side of the offensive line. Patrick's last start against the Panthers, he gave up 2 sacks. How will the Bears try to overwhelm the right side of the offensive line in today's game?
Well, I think that's the side that Khalil Mack lines up a lot on anyway. They move around when they want to get the best matchup, but I think his listed position is on the left side, so they'll probably try to match him up with Wagner as much as they can. Maybe they like the matchup on either side with him, but as Tom Silverstein suggested in a column he did earlier this week, with Hicks playing too, maybe they just line up on certain passing downs or on any down really, Mack and Hicks on the same side. And those are 2 best guys in the front four. So let those 2 guys have at it, which that's a tough matchup for the Packers.
Good news for the Packers offense today. Running back Jamal Williams returns to the lineup after missing last week's game against the Titans with a quad injury. Head coach Matt LaFleur has a bit of a good problem on his hands. He is going to have to figure out how to balance 3 very talented running backs in his rotation. Rookie running back A.J. Dillon is coming off of a 21-carry, 124-yard game. He scored 2 touchdowns, his first 2 touchdowns of his career. How will LaFleur try to distribute those touches among his 3 running backs?
Yeah, that's kind of one of the big questions watching the rest of the season. I'll be curious to see who gets in second. Will it be will Williams get the first set after Jones comes out, or will it be Dillon? I'd go with Dillon if I were the Packers. He's the more talented runner, but I don't know what LaFleur will do. Coaches a lot of times err on the side of the guy who really knows what he's doing and is assignment sure, and in this case that would be Williams is really experienced, and he's a good player, but Dillon's the more talented. You got to suspect, we'll see all 3 of them, and occasionally, 2 of them on the field together for maybe at least a handful of snaps.
The Bears defense is dealing with some injuries right now. Cornerback Jalen Johnson, a starter, is out today with a shoulder injury, and nickel cornerback Buster Screen has a concussion. He will not be playing in today's game. The Packers may be tempted then to pass it a little bit more on this injured Bears defense. However, looking back to last game in Week 12, the Packers had some success running the ball. They had 182 yards on the ground. How will the Packers offense attack the Bears defense today?
Well, they always like to be balanced, but yeah, that's a big deal. Jalen Johnson's a pretty good rookie. He's a pretty good-looking player, and Screen is there. He's basically a starter because your teams are playing nickel for probably 2/3 of the snaps. Most of them are at least nickel or dime. So yeah, that's a really big deal that both of those guys are going to be gone, and that helps out the Packers quite a bit. and it makes it that much tougher to both cover Devontae Adams and everybody else. Tanyan and all, Lazard at receiver, Valdez Scantling, anything that Aaron Jones might do in the passing game. So big advantage for the Packers there.
Let's take a look at the Packers inactives today. No surprise first, quarterback Jordan Love is inactive. Cornerback Josh Jackson is inactive. Outside linebacker Jonathan Garvin inactive. Those two are healthy scratches. We also have, guard Simon Stepanak is inactive. He is still working his way back from non-football injury list. He sustained a torn ACL last December, still working his way back. Tight end Jay Sternberger, also inactive. He recently came out of the concussion protocol where he was for 3 weeks. He has missed now. This is going to be his 4th consecutive missed game. And defensive lineman Kingsley Keke, who is currently in concussion protocol after last week's game against the Tennessee Titans. That means that nose tackle Damon Snacks Harrison is active today, Pete. The Packers picked him up earlier this week off of waivers. How likely is it that he gets some substantial playing time today?
Yeah, I don't know. What do you consider substantial? What do you think? 10 snaps? Would you call that substantial?
20% of the defensive snaps, perhaps?
Yeah. I think he should be in good enough shape for it, judging by when he was with Seattle. I think it was 120 snaps or right around there in 6 games. So that's 20 a game. That's, most games are about 65 snaps. So that's almost a third of them. So as far as conditioning goes, he should be okay. Maybe the Packers have some qualms about, how much he'll know the scheme and what he's doing. Although, especially with defensive linemen, it's mostly just what's happening right there in front of them. But I don't know if he'll, if he's active, I would think, 5 to 10 snaps at least. And I think they want to see how much, what he can do to help for going down the line here too for the playoffs. So my best guess is he'd play, 10 to 15 would be my best guess.
Also worth mentioning, we've discussed Rick Wagner and his possibility that he'll start in today's game. He is active for today's game after dealing with a knee injury earlier this week, a knee injury that knocked him out of the Titans game. He had been a limited participant in practice on Thursday and Friday. He is good to go today, so we'll let you know as soon as we know the starting offensive line combination over on PackersNews.com. Let's also hit on the Bears inactives quickly. Cornerback Jalen Johnson and Buster Screen, as we mentioned, are out today. Safety Deion Bush is also inactive, so the Bears secondary certainly taking a hit. Offensive lineman Latavius Simmons, nose tackle Daniel McCullers, and wide receiver Riley Ridley are all out for the Bears today. So something to keep in mind heading into today's game. Let's go over to Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube for some of your questions today. Thank you so much for joining us. It is great to see all of you. Let's start with our good friend Eric Baranchik over on Facebook. Eric wants to know, Olivia and Pete, if the Packers are up by 14 or more by the half, do they sit quarterback Aaron Rodgers? How likely is it that the Packers would be willing to sit Rodgers if they get up to a sizable lead by halftime to get quarterback Tim Boyle some snaps?
I would guess no way. With the way they've been doing it, they need to win this game. They want that number 1 seed pretty badly. And with the way NFL coaches are in general, and LaFleur's been, it's got to be a 4-score game in the 4th quarter, I would think, before Rodgers comes out. That's my best guess.
Thanks, Eric, for your question, Pete. If you can't tell, I'm smiling underneath my mask. Let's go over to Brian over on Facebook. Brian asks, if we're surprised that tight end Jay Sternberger is inactive today. Sternberger has been out now. It's going to be his 4th game. He was in concussion protocol for almost 3 weeks. He was also dealing with an illness last week, part of the reason that he was sidelined from practice. How surprised are you that the Packers are going to take a little bit of time to get him acclimated before throwing him back into game action?
It does make you wonder if the illness was the thing that put it over, because you'd think they'd want him to start getting game ready again, because they're probably going to need this guy in the postseason. They need anybody who can make a play. You never know who might make a huge play in any of these playoff games. That could be the difference. So you wonder if the illness was just enough to put it over the edge to where he was not, where he was left inactive today.
We've got a fun suggestion from let's see. We had somebody suggest that the Packers should put A.J. Dillon at at left tackle. There it is. Gaston suggests that A.J. Dillon should go at left tackle. They might need him to run the ball, however, perhaps maybe that could happen at some point. Thank you, Gaston, for your question. Ray says that they wouldn't be surprised to see the Packers put Elton Jenkins at left tackle. Jenkins has lined up at all three positions this season, center, guard, and tackle. Which of the three are his best position?
That's a really good question. I kind of think guard, but one of the things that makes him so good is it really, it's pretty close, and he can do all three of them well. It's a plausible argument for putting him out there at left tackle because he's their, after Bakhtiari, he's their next most talented guy. But just that Turner has done it before and done it more and did it in those earlier games, I still think that's the better guess. But what makes Jenkins a really good player and what's going to get him a really nice payday in a couple of years is that he is just as good at center as guard and probably just as good, at least at right tackle, as he is at guard. He's just a really, really good football player, a really good offensive lineman.
Thanks so much, Ray, for your question. Let's go over to Steve on Facebook. Steve wants to know if one of the defensive goals will be to make quarterback Mitch Trubisky be Mitch and to keep him in the pocket. We talked about this earlier this week, Pete. How likely is it that the Packers try to keep Mitch Trubisky in the pocket so he isn't so prone to scrambling and extending plays?
Yeah, I would assume that's the whole, a huge part of the game plan. Like as we also talked about earlier this week, as Tramon Williams said a couple of years ago, you got to make Mitch play quarterback, which by that he means make him sit in the pocket and be a pocket passer because it is outside the pocket where he's at his best, either picking up first down, scrambling, that keeps drives alive. I think he's a decent thrower on the run, whereas his accuracy as a pocket passer relative to most pocket passers isn't as good. So that's a huge thing is everybody staying in their rush lanes. You do wonder, I saw there was a comment about this, I didn't see who made it, but about spying him. I would think that'll be part of the game plan. And maybe not, not all the time, but, enough, and especially on those, on the 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, those are the plays where, the good running quarterback scramble and pick up the first down. So I suspect we'll see some Chris Barnes spying him too.
Thanks so much, everyone, for your questions there. Let's go over to Steve again on Facebook. Good questions from Steve today. Steve wants to know, the Bears offense has put up over 30 points in their last 3 weeks against poor defenses. Will they even get to 20 today? Over the last 4 games, the Bears have averaged 35 points per game. Those opponents include not only the Packers, of course, but also I believe the Texans, the Vikings, and the Jaguars. How likely is it that the Bears can sustain that high level of production against the Packers and their number 7 defense in yards?
Yeah, I don't know. They've been better for sure, and they're running the ball a lot better than they did for most of the season, which suggests, a lot of that's Montgomery, but, some of it's got to be the offensive line and the commitment to the run game. I'm trying to remember what score you picked. I looked yesterday, Olivia. I can't remember. I think I went 31-21 maybe, so I had them over 20. I think you had it a little close. You might have had it a little closer.
I think I had about a 10-point differential or so, 10 or 9 points, and I had the Packers scoring 38, the Bears scoring in the high 20s.
Yeah, so if I'm betting, I'm betting that the Bears get over 20. But Steve's right. The Packers defense has played better, and they played a really good game last week against one of the top 3 scoring teams in the league right now. So if they can get ahead and make Trubisky, as we were talking earlier, a pocket passer, maybe the Bears don't get to 21. That's just one of the things that makes these games interesting. I think the final spread was it 5.5 or 6.5? Either way, you don't know. Either way, I think the Packers have covered that, but I'm guessing the Bears get over that 20 mark.
Thanks so much, Steve, for participating today. It's good to see you. Let's go over to Amy on Facebook. Amy wants to know if the Packers will use more tight ends to help protect Aaron Rodgers. How how likely is it that we see Mercedes Lewis and Robert Tunyon lining up in line with the offensive line to help do some pass protection?
Yeah, you would think with Bakhtiari, it's one of the great things with having a left tackle you hardly ever have to help out is you don't even have to check. You don't have to keep an extra blocker in on his side. With Khalil Mack out there, I suspect we'll see more of that, either keeping the tight end in or at least having him or the running back chip on their way out. I would think we'll see a fair amount of that today.
Thanks so much, Amy, for your question. Let's go over to David on Facebook. David wants to know if wide receiver Davante Adams will get his record catches and touchdowns today. Davante Adams is chomping at the bit to eclipse Sterling Sharp, who set a record back in 1990 for 18 touchdowns on the season. Davante Adams currently at 17. How likely is it that he is not only able to tie Sterling Sharp, but beat him?
Good question. If I were betting, I would bet that he breaks the record today if I had to bet on it. What about you?
I think he can do it at this rate. After last week, he scored 3 touchdowns. It's most likely, I would say he can probably do it. All right, everyone. Let's take another question here. Oh, man, we got Lee thinking that David Bakhtiari could come out and play on one leg. Possibly, we'll see about that. Randall wants to know if the Bears would sign Mitch Trubisky. How well does he need to play in today's game in order for him to be considered to be brought back to Chicago?
Yeah, you see all this stuff about, that he may still be, with how he's played in the last month, it still might be a possibility. And that, I saw a headline that, this game could determine his fate for next year. If I'm the Bears, you only know for sure if you're in the building and you see the study habits and the work habits and then everything in practice. But I think he's had a pretty good chance to show what he could be, and I find it a little hard to believe that they would make him their guy, for the next 2 or 3 years. It's just hard to envision that he's shown enough to be that. There's a real track record out there. And I think there are probably just a few too many limitations if I'm the Bears. But who knows what they're thinking, and who knows if this current regime survives this season or not. It's going to be, it sounds like it's going to be a close call whether Pace and Nagy are back next year or not.
Thanks so much, Randall, for your question. Andrew over on Facebook wants to know if A.J. Dillon, over under 15 carries today. Last week, without Jamal Williams in the rotation, A.J. Dillon had 21 carries. How many carries do you anticipate him having today with all 3 running backs healthy?
That's a tough over and under, isn't it? I'm going to go, I'm going to guess a hair under, just best guess. But that's a pretty good place to set that, Andrew.
I'll say 10, so under. I'll take the under from Andrew. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for your lovely questions and for joining us. I will be live after the game today with Ryan Wood to wrap everything up and to take your questions once again. So make sure you're coming back to Packers News on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube. For Pete Dougherty, I am Olivia Reiner. Enjoy the game. We will see you next time.